Since the beginning of human history, mankind has searched for one terrifying answer. What is the true source of evil? Is evil born on battlefields, in wars and bloodshed? Or does it begin much earlier, quietly inside the human mind? Long before modern psychology existed, ancient thinkers, theologians, and philosophers identified something deeply unsettling about human nature. They believed that evil does not arrive suddenly. It grows slowly, fed by desire, emotion, and unchecked instinct. From this belief emerged a dark moral framework known as the 7 deadly sins. These sins were not simply bad habits. They were seen as spiritual poisons, fundamental flaws capable of corrupting the soul, destroying societies, and pulling entire civilizations into collapse. Each sin represents a powerful human impulse that, when left uncontrolled, turns into self-destruction. Lust distorts love into obsession. Gluttony transforms survival into excess. Greed turns ambition into exploitation. Sloth buries potential beneath comfort and fear. Wrath converts pain into violence. Envy poisons the mind with comparison and resentment. And pride, the most dangerous of them all, convinces humans that they are above consequence, above morality, and above God itself. Throughout history, these sins have shaped kings and tyrants, fueled wars, shattered empires, and ruined ordinary lives in silence. They appear in ancient scriptures, medieval art, Gothic literature, and even modern films and psychology. Though centuries have passed, the 7 deadly sins remain frighteningly relevant. They are not monsters hiding in shadows. They are reflections staring back at us from the mirror. In this video, we will journey deep into the psychological, historical, and symbolic meanings of each sin. We will explore how they manifest in the human mind, how they have influenced real historical events, and why they continue to control human behavior even in the modern world. This is not just a story of morality. It is a story of temptation, downfall, and the fragile line between control and chaos. By the end of this journey, one question will remain. Are the 7 deadly sins ancient warnings from the past, or timeless truths about who we really are?
Lust is often misunderstood as simple desire, but in its purest and most dangerous form, lust is the corruption of love itself. In ancient times, lust was not seen as attraction alone, but as a consuming fire that overtakes reason, loyalty, and restraint. It is the moment when desire stops being human and becomes something primal, uncontrollable, and destructive. Before Christ, early civilizations believed lust was a force sent by dark spirits to weaken kings, warriors, and entire bloodlines. Ancient texts and paintings often showed lust as a whispering shadow, entering the human heart quietly, promising pleasure but delivering ruin. It was believed that once lust takes hold, the soul begins to decay, even while the body feels alive. Lust blinds judgment. It replaces wisdom with hunger. In ancient myths, powerful men fell not to armies, but to temptation. Kingdoms collapsed not by war, but by forbidden desire within palace walls. Lust was seen as the sin that opens the door for all others, because once control is lost, the soul becomes vulnerable. In pre-Christian societies, lust was symbolized through serpents, flames, and corrupted fertility symbols. These were not signs of life, but warnings. Desire without discipline was believed to summon chaos. Families were destroyed, honor was erased, and spiritual balance was broken. Ancient philosophers described lust as a sickness of the eyes and mind. What begins as a glance turns into obsession. What begins as curiosity becomes possession. The individual no longer sees people as souls, but as objects meant to satisfy craving. This dehumanization was considered one of lust's darkest powers. Lust was feared because it disguises itself as beauty. It feels warm, inviting, and irresistible, yet it slowly consumes dignity, loyalty, and self-control. In ancient belief systems, those ruled by lust were seen as already half lost, walking the world while their spirit drifted toward darkness. Lust is not loud like wrath, nor proud like arrogance. It is silent, patient, and persuasive. It waits for weakness, and when it strikes, it does not destroy immediately. It corrodes slowly, relentlessly, until nothing sacred remains untouched.
Gluttony is not simply about food or consumption. It is the insatiable hunger that turns survival into obsession. In the ancient world, gluttony was feared as a spiritual imbalance, a force that clouds judgment, corrupts moderation, and destroys communities from within. It was not only about eating or drinking excessively, but about indulgence of every kind that consumes the soul silently. Before Christ, civilizations observed that those overtaken by gluttony often failed to see the suffering around them. Kings who gorged on endless feasts neglected their people. Warriors who overindulged in pleasures grew weak in body and spirit. Gluttony was portrayed as an invisible hand that erodes discipline, transforms desire into dependence, and blinds humans to the consequences of excess. Ancient texts describe gluttony as a creeping shadow inside the human body, represented symbolically through overflowing cups, mountains of food, and monstrous beasts consuming endlessly. It was believed that gluttony spread silently, first corrupting the body, then clouding the mind, and finally devouring the spirit. In early frescoes and murals, gluttony was shown as humans surrounded by abundance, yet still reaching for more, their eyes empty, hands grasping, mouths open in endless hunger. Often, shadowy spirits or serpents whispered into their ears, symbolizing the unending craving that could never be satisfied. The ancients warned that gluttony weakens communities as well as individuals. A gluttonous ruler or priest brought imbalance and corruption, allowing injustice to flourish while they indulged. It was not the act of eating that was sinful, but the complete surrender to insatiable appetite, pleasure over morality, hunger over reason. Gluttony's true terror lies in its subtlety. It does not destroy instantly like wrath, nor does it seem proud or loud. Instead, it creeps into every aspect of life, making humans dependent on desires they cannot control. In a world ruled by gluttony, the soul is a vessel constantly filled and drained, never satisfied, always yearning, slowly decaying under the weight of its own indulgence. Ancient artists captured this by showing humans dwarfed by enormous feasts, grotesque figures symbolizing insatiable appetites, and dark shadows creeping through overflowing banquet halls. These images were warnings etched in walls and carved in stone. Unchecked consumption leads to ruin, both of body and spirit. Gluttony is a mirror of human weakness. It reminds us that abundance is dangerous if wisdom is absent. The ancient pre-Christian civilizations understood this, embedding these lessons into murals, pottery, and wall paintings, a testament to humanity's eternal struggle with desire beyond necessity.
Greed is the unquenchable desire for more wealth, more power, more influence. In the ancient world, greed was feared not merely as selfishness, but as a corrosive force that undermines society, corrupts morality, and enslaves the human soul. It is the sin that transforms ambition into obsession, turning humans into vessels of insatiable craving. Before Christ, civilizations observed that greed led to the rise and fall of kingdoms. Kings hoarded treasures while subjects starved. Merchants manipulated trade for personal gain, and priests misused spiritual authority to amass wealth. Greed was often represented in murals and carvings as shadowy hands reaching endlessly for gold, jewels, or sacred objects, illustrating that desire for more is never satisfied. Ancient thinkers described greed as a creeping shadow that enters the mind quietly. It begins with small envy, a wish to possess what another has, and grows into a relentless hunger that consumes thought, heart, and conscience. Once fully taken hold, greed blinds the human to ethics, justice, and compassion. In pre-Christian art, greed was symbolized through overflowing treasure chests, golden idols, and monstrous figures with exaggerated arms, mouths, or eyes, all consuming endlessly. Humans depicted alongside these symbols often appeared dwarfed, bowing, or trapped, showing the overwhelming power of desire, unchecked by restraint. Greed also corrupts communities. Ancient frescoes often show merchants or kings isolated in their wealth, surrounded by crumbling buildings or suffering people, demonstrating that unrestrained ambition destabilizes society. This sin is subtle. It disguises itself as hard work, cleverness, or divine favor, yet it destroys from within. The terrors of greed are psychological and spiritual. Unlike wrath, it does not rage outward instantly. Unlike lust, it does not consume the body first. Instead, it slowly distorts the mind, poisons relationships, and spreads injustice, leaving nothing untouched by its shadow. Artists of the time captured greed through symbolic exaggeration, massive treasure, twisted, monstrous forms, endless hands grasping, and eyes filled with hunger. These ancient images were warnings, messages etched in stone, plaster, and papyrus, teaching that the desire for more, without discipline, is a path to ruin.
Sloth is not simply laziness, it is the slow decay of the human spirit. In the ancient world, sloth was feared as a spiritual and moral paralysis, a state where potential, duty, and wisdom are buried beneath comfort, fear, or indifference. It is the sin that quietly erodes ambition and morality, allowing darkness to thrive unnoticed. Before Christ, civilizations observed that sloth led to the downfall of individuals and empires alike. Farmers who ignored their fields, warriors who shirked training, rulers who neglected their people. Sloth spread silently, but with devastating effect. Ancient societies symbolized sloth not as a physical act, but as a spiritual disease, a shadow creeping over the soul, sapping energy and willpower. In murals and frescoes, sloth was often depicted as humans reclining endlessly, blind to the world around them. Shadowy forms hovered over them, whispering apathy into their ears. Time itself seemed to slow, crops withered, battles were lost, and opportunities vanished. Sloth was seen as the seed of decay, where inactivity becomes a conduit for all other sins. The ancients warned that sloth is particularly dangerous because it disguises itself as rest, patience, or contemplation. Unlike lust or greed, it is silent, invisible, and easily justified. The idle mind becomes fertile ground for fear, envy, and despair. In artwork, sloth is symbolized by drooping figures, abandoned tools, fading light, and shadowed eyes, humans asleep while life passes them by. Sloth corrodes not only the individual, but the community. Kings and priests who succumbed to sloth allowed chaos to flourish. Fields went untended, armies weakened, and laws went unenforced. The ancient pre-Christian civilizations captured this moral lesson in frescoes, murals, and carvings, warning future generations that inaction is as dangerous as wrongdoing. Ultimately, sloth is the theft of potential. It does not destroy with fire or flood, but erodes quietly, leaving humans trapped in a cycle of missed opportunity, spiritual emptiness, and unseen corruption. The darkness of sloth is patient, relentless, and waiting for every moment of weakness. Wrath is not merely anger. It is the unrestrained force of rage that consumes reason, empathy, and humanity itself. In the ancient world, wrath was feared as a destructive storm, capable of toppling kingdoms, igniting wars, and corrupting the soul. It is sudden, explosive, and leaves devastation in its wake. Before Christ, civilizations depicted wrath as a shadowy fire within humans, a force that awakens both primal instinct and destructive power. Kings and warriors ruled not only with wisdom, but with restraint, knowing that unchecked anger could destroy armies, nations, and dynasties. Murals, frescoes, and relief carvings often portrayed wrath as humans engulfed in flames, or shadowy beasts erupting from chests, symbolizing the violent force that rage brings when it overtakes reason. Wrath does not merely harm others, it erodes the mind of the one who harbors it. Ancient texts describe rage as a consuming fire, starting as a spark from insult, betrayal, or injustice, and growing into a wildfire that blinds the eyes, clouds judgment, and turns allies into enemies. Those ruled by wrath often act impulsively, forgetting strategy, loyalty, and morality. Artists of the pre-Christian era symbolized wrath with explosive imagery, shadowy figures wielding weapons, storm clouds above, fire emerging from human bodies, or beasts tearing at the weak. The flames of anger were depicted consuming not only foes, but the angry themselves, a visual warning that uncontrolled rage destroys both the target and the source. Wrath was also linked to divine punishment in ancient civilizations. Humans who failed to control their temper were shown in murals as being struck by lightning, engulfed in fire, or hunted by monstrous shadowy figures, symbolizing that unrestrained anger disrupts balance and invites ruin. The danger of wrath lies in its immediacy. Unlike greed or sloth, it erupts without warning. Unlike lust or gluttony, it leaves clear marks of destruction. Yet ancient societies understood that wrath could also awaken courage or justice when controlled. The key warning in their art was always the same: rage must be mastered, or it will master you. Ancient frescoes, cave paintings, and carvings captured this duality. Humans ablaze with anger, yet dwarfed by the consequences of their own fury. Wrath is a reminder that the most dangerous battles are not always against others, but within oneself.
Envy is the silent poison of the soul. Unlike wrath, it does not erupt violently, and unlike greed, it may not consume with obvious hunger. Envy seeps quietly into the human mind, twisting perception, sowing resentment, and turning admiration into bitterness. In the ancient world, envy was feared because it undermined harmony, corrupted relationships, and fueled countless conflicts. Before Christ, civilizations depicted envy as a shadow creeping behind humans, whispering of others' fortune, beauty, or power. Kings envied neighboring rulers, warriors envied the strength of their comrades, and priests envied divine favor bestowed upon others. Envy was understood not merely as wanting what another possessed, but as a corrosive force that made the envious blind to their own blessings and moral responsibilities. Ancient frescoes and murals often symbolized envy through subtle imagery, humans reaching for objects or crowns that float just beyond their grasp, eyes glowing with longing, shadowy tendrils curling around the body. Animals such as serpents or jackals sometimes appeared as companions, symbolizing cunning and the insidious nature of desire for what others have. Envy slowly erodes joy, turning admiration into malice. Communities crumbled when envy spread unchecked. Friends turned to rivals, families were torn apart, and alliances destroyed. In art, humans were often shown with distorted faces, elongated fingers reaching greedily, or shadowed forms lurking behind seemingly innocent smiles. Envy was a warning that the mind itself can become a battlefield, with darkness growing quietly if unchecked. Envy differs from greed because it targets what belongs to others, not oneself. Unlike lust, it is not physical desire, but spiritual hunger.
Ancient artists portrayed it as a creeping shadow over the heart, a weight upon the shoulders, a subtle distortion of perception, showing that even admiration, when twisted, can become deadly. Ultimately, envy is the sin that eats away silently. Its power lies in patience. It waits, it festers, and it strikes when it can turn another's fortune into personal despair. The pre-Christian civilizations knew its danger well, embedding warnings in murals, frescoes, and carvings. The shadow of envy is always watching, always waiting, always whispering. Pride is the crown of all sins, the one that elevates the self above reason, morality, and even the divine. In the ancient world, pride was feared as the sin that corrupts all others, because it blinds the mind, inflates the ego, and turns admiration into arrogance. It is the sin that whispers, "I am above all." Before Christ, civilizations portrayed pride as the greatest spiritual peril. Kings, rulers, and warriors who allowed pride to guide them often fell first, not by external enemies, but by their own overconfidence and disregard for the natural order. Pride was seen as a force that isolates, creating illusions of invincibility, while shadows gather unseen to exploit weakness. Ancient frescoes and murals symbolized pride through elevated figures standing atop pedestals, glowing with unnatural light, yet surrounded by shadowy figures waiting to pull them down. Humans depicted with crowns, halos, or oversized statues represented both their hubris and the fragility of such arrogance. Pride turns beauty into vanity, wisdom into arrogance, and power into blind overconfidence. The ancients warned that pride gives birth to all other sins: lust, greed, envy, wrath, sloth, and gluttony all begin or are amplified by pride. Murals often show humans bowing to no one, ignoring shadows creeping at their feet, symbolic of the unseen consequences of inflated self-importance. Pride is the beginning of downfall, the silent architect of ruin. Artists represented pride in subtle and dramatic ways: humans looking into mirrors, statues casting long shadows, shadowy serpents coiling around crowned figures, or towering pedestals cracking under the weight of arrogance. The message was clear. No matter how powerful one seems, pride makes them vulnerable to forces beyond sight or understanding. Unlike wrath, pride does not burn outward. Unlike lust, it does not crave others, it craves itself. Unlike sloth, it is active, ambitious, and visible. Pride is the most dangerous because it feels righteous and justified, masking corruption behind splendor. The pre-Christian civilizations captured this duality in murals, frescoes, and carvings, the dazzling beauty of the proud and the subtle shadows plotting their fall. Ultimately, pride is the sin of self-deception. It is the mirror that shows greatness, yet hides weakness. It is the spark that ignites all other sins. And for this reason, in ancient art, pride was always depicted at the center, elevated yet surrounded by shadows, warning that the higher one stands, the farther one can fall.